Welcome to the Andrew D'Angelo podcast.
Constant Constance. Each week, Andrew, renowned jazz saxophonist and brain cancer survivor, invites us to look at the many worlds of his guests, with conversations that cover all the arts, human resilience, a little bit of politics, and a lot of humour.
You can't fail to have a fantastic time.
Hey everyone, we're here today with the most amazing composer, guitarist, arranger, just brilliant and kind and very revered man, Mr. Bill Frisell. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
I as I mentioned during our break, that I wanted to tell this anecdote. So it's about 1991, 92. I really did due diligence and looked on the internet. I could not find anything. But you said that you think you remember this gig. And I was the manager at Tower Records at the time, or the jazz department anyway. It was big. It was a big jazz department. And one of my employees gave me this review, and I think it was Jazz Is. It could have been Jazz Times, or a preview of a concert you were doing with the drummer, Joey Byron, a duo at the Institute of Contemporary Art on Newbury Street, Boylston Street. And it said, the reviewer said, Bill Frisell is the greatest thing to happen to guitar since Jimi Hendrix. I was like, all right, I got to see this shit. Right. And so I go to the ICA, and I probably was on the guest list, so I apologize. You didn't make any money off me for that gig. But holy shit, that was such a great, amazing show, Bill. I mean, literally, that really is at least 20 years ago. And you and Joey played duo. You were sitting for that show.
So now I can't remember. I thought I knew what this was, but now I don't remember.
I'm not surprised, but could you be impressed that had such an impact on a young man at the time that I can remember it, going on 60. I'm like, it was such a cool show. And you were doing, that was back when people thought you were bending the guitar, right? I mean, isn't that what a lot of people were talking?
Yeah, they would say that, which is, I guess it was true.
Right.
But wow, it was just duo with Joey.
Right. And I think you were working this record, Where in the World, with Hank Roberts and Kermit Driscoll. Hank Roberts was playing cello, Kermit Driscoll, and Joey Byron. I think you were out promoting that record. I could be wrong, but it doesn't matter the details. It had just such a huge impact on me that I was like, that's what I want to do for the rest of my life, man. I just want to make music like that. Whatever that is, that's what I want to do. It doesn't really matter if you remember. I'm just giving you a compliment. That's all.
Well, thank you. But do you remember, weren't you at the Middle East Club? Do you remember that?
Oh, you want to? All right. Going right there. So we did that show.
Because that would have been after that, right?
That was after that. That was like a good year, maybe two after that.
Wow.
With your band, with also with Kermit and Joey. And I don't know, was Hank in that band too? I'm not sure.
I think Hank might have still been in there at that, or else it might have just been trio, but that's where I remember first. That's where we actually met.
No, I didn't meet you at the ICA. We met at the Middle East, and we did a double bill with Human Feel and your band. And excuse me. And I'll never forget two things. After the show, we were sitting at a table. I think it was Crispy, Jim Black, and Kurt Rosenwinkel and I, and you were talking to us, okay? And you were just telling stories and stuff. And we were just going, yeah, okay, cool. We're talking to Bill Frisell, man. This is so cool. And then you said, oh, I'm probably boring you guys. We're like, no, keep going, man. And it was just such a monumental I have so many of those, and apparently other people do. Sorry, just like tearing up a little bit here. But you said something to, I think, Tim Byrne, our alto saxophonist friend. Man, those guys play their asses off. And we use that as a quote in our press. It said, those guys play their asses off, Bill Frisell. Like, that was our big claim to fame, man. Do you remember that?
Well, yeah. I mean, you did. It was the whole night. No, it was amazing. Like, where did these guys come from?
I don't know where we came from, man.
Because I didn't know anything about when I think about that, all you guys, man. And then I found out later that Kung Fu was at that gig too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, wow, what a convergence right there, Like
a prediction or something, a foreshadowing of the future or something like this, right? I guess it's one of those things where, I do where I post on social media. I don't know if you saw the post. I tried to hide it from you as best as I could, or your wife.
Oh, no, I swore that off a few months ago, so haven't seen. Oh man. So I asked people if they have questions for you, right? And one of the things was that quote, those guys play their asses off. Mary's like, I remember that, man. And then, by the way, this whole conversation or interview, whatever you want to call it, I could literally just read the social media questions that your fans have for you. And I'm happy to do that. But it's just, you're so revered, dude. I mean, people love you. They love you and including Reed Anderson, who, when you and I were texting yesterday, who I just spent time with, was talking about the trio with Motion, on the drummer Paul Motion, and then Joe Lovano, tenor saxophone, and Reed goes, would you please ask Bill to talk about that trio? Like, even Reed Anderson's like, hey, would you ask Bill? It's awesome, man. It's so awesome. Well,
what?
I don't know what to say. I mean, I'm thankful. I get,
What?
You want me to talk about the trio?
I mean, personally, I feel like you're very well documented. You've done a lot of interviews. I've seen stuff about you talking about your pedals. You like your Telecaster, right? And I mean, I've heard there's just so much about you. Maybe the one thing Reed Anderson was talking about is, we haven't heard much about that trio. I mean, I've played with Motion, right? So I've heard from Paul a little bit, but yeah, if you don't mind talking about it.
I mean, that whole relationship with Paul was just, I can't even begin to tell you how important that was in my life. It's weird. We're talking about Boston, and I might be going back too far, but in 1975, I went to Berkeley, and that's where I met Pat Metheny. He was in town at that time. It was before he even started his own band. He was, I'd go to these gigs, like he put up these flyers.
Metheny was putting up flyers?
Yeah, like at Club Zircon Saturday night.
Wow.
Pat Metheny, it was handwritten with a magic marker.
Wow.
It says Pat Metheny, Bob Moses, and from Florida, Jaco Pastorius, like nobody knew who Jaco was, right?
Yeah.
And so that stuff was going on. And that's a whole nother story, but it was that time, mid 70s, and I met Pat, and I asked Pat for a lesson, and I went over to his place and we played a little bit, and he liked me a lot. He would show, I'd be playing gigs around town and he would show up. And so a couple years later, I'd left Boston. I went to Europe. I finally got up the nerve to move to New York. And, I spent a couple years in New York, like, wow, what am I going to do? I'm, playing weddings and scuffling around.
Wow.
And I remember I was up again. I was in Boston. I went up to Boston to do a gig, like sort of in a Holiday Inn kind of place or something. And I wasn't feeling things were looking kind of bleak, like, oh man, I just drove all the way up here and and I wasn't really, I was cleaning houses, just trying to get by, still getting to play with a lot of my friends. There's no doubt that I was going to spend the rest of my life playing music. That was no matter what. But I was up in Boston. I drove back. We had this little apartment in New Jersey, and in the public library, I had I borrowed, it was Paul Motion's first album, Conception Vessel, and I had it, was leaning on the floor of my apartment, and the phone rings, and, hey man, it's Paul Motion. And I'm like, what the hell?
Right. No way, man. Right.
I could not believe, for me, that was sort of the Miles Davis phone call, they talk or whatever, it was like it was huge deal for me that he called. And this was, reason I mentioned Pat was the one that he'd been doing some gigs with Pat Metheny, and he was looking for a guitar player, and Pat told him to call me. Wow. And I'll be forever grateful.
Yeah, thank you, right?
Yeah, man, talk about, and it was such a huge, because I was just a big fan. Like one of the very first concerts I went to in high school, first Downbeat magazine I bought had Charles Lloyd on the cover. And I thought, wow, he looks so cool. I got to check out what this is. And so he's coming to Denver to play. This is January 1969. And so my friend and I got tickets for the concert. I didn't even know what the music really sounded like. I just thought he looked cool at that point. So we went to the gig, and the band was Charles, and Ron McClure was playing bass, and Keith Jarrett was playing piano, who we didn't know who. That's the first time I ever heard Keith. And
Keith Jarrett?
And Paul Motion was playing drums. It was right, I guess, after Jack DeJohnette had left the band or something. So one of the first concerts or jazz, if we can use that word, concerts I saw Paul. And then that was just opened the door. Then I went out and bought Keith's first trio record, and that was the first time I ever heard Charlie Hayden play, was on that album. And one thing leads to another. I never could have imagined that I'd be getting a phone call from that guy, like however many years. It's weird. It's not even that many years later. It's 69 to 81. How many? 12 years. A lot happened in that time,
So did you actually recorded with Charlie's daughter, right? Am I correct?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. We've done a bunch of things together, and I guess it's one of those things. I was at Kenny Garrett's house in New Jersey in the late 80s when he got the call from Miles. Oh, what? Whoa.
Yeah. And so I want to tell that story. I'm sorry. I'm using you. I'm using you right now, Bill, but I was at Kenny's house, and he goes, old school, like we didn't have cell phones then. It's 1986 or something like this, 87, whatever. And he goes, the phone rang. He goes, hold on, I got to grab this. And it was the call from Miles. And he's like, you got to go, Andrew. And I was like, all right, cool. He told me it was a call from Miles. So anyway, I just thought that was interesting.
That is so cool. And there's so many stories of guys hanging up on him because they didn't believe it.
You're right.
Everybody did,
It's like, you're not You're not Paul Motion. Come on. You wouldn't call me, or you're not Miles Davis, right? I mean, but so Bill, I know that place in Boston, the Holiday Inn. I think it was across the street from Fenway Park. And apparently, what's his name? The Babe Ruth used to go over there and drink during the 7th inning break. I mean, who knows if it's true, but they were having gigs there for a while. Is that the Holiday Inn that you played
no,
at?
this was more, it was somewhere out in the outskirts of,
okay.
I don't even remember.
I mean, it just seems like people would be blown away that you actually had to do those kind of gigs at this point, you know?
Well, no, I mean, that's, and I don't want to, I feel bad when I learned so much from that. And I feel bad when I sort of put those gigs down, you know, it's because there's a lot to be, there's something, you know, I was getting to play music. It just wasn't really what I was dreaming about, you know?
Well, so when you tell us, or tell my audience, when you say you learned so much, what are we learning from those gigs? I mean, what's being learned?
Well, I mean, you still have to know the song, and you have to listen, and sometimes those would be some high moments, you know, when people are dancing and the music is happening. It's as good as anything, you know. But I mean, I remember another lesson. I'm sorry to keep going back to Boston all the time, but
it's all good, man.
Did you know Tiger Okoshi in Boston?
I did, yes. I didn't know him well, but I yes.
I mean, he was, soon after I went there, we became really close, you know, and started a band together and everything. You know, he was my brother there, and but we would do those kind of gigs together. And I remember one night it was way up north shore above Boston. We did this gig, and I'm like, man, I'm grumbling. And we had to play Beer Barrel Polka.
Oh, wow.
And I was like,
I would pay good money to hear you play Beer Barrel Polka, man.
Well, I'm telling you, because I can play it now, but on that night, I'm thinking, oh man, Beer Barrel Polka, you know, I have to play the melody, and I sort of fumbled around, and I'm kind of laughing, and, you know, oh, this is so lame. And, you know, and I got through the gig, and then we're driving back down to Boston, and Tiger was like, man, he really put me down. He said, man, you think you're so great, you know, you can't even play the melody. You got to play the melody correctly, you know, you can't be making fun of the gig. And, you know, I mean, that was like kind of it was a strong lesson for me, you know, like whatever you're playing, you got to put everything into it and try to make something out of it, you know. And so that I think I learned something from that.
Right. But you learned something it was more philosophical than it was about anything else, right?
Well, also that I just couldn't play the melody. I better, you know,
okay.
Like stuff that I like, you know, I shouldn't be making fun of stuff. I better actually play it before.
You can play it, then you can make fun of it, right? Is that fair?
Yeah. Well, I guess so. Even then, then you realize, then maybe by learning it, then you realize, wait a minute, I better just shut my mouth. So.
My grandpa Schroeder used to sing the Beer Barrel Polka, and he used to play it on his organ. He had one of those.
Oh, wow.
Like in your house. It's not a pump organ. Is it a pump organ? What do you call that thing? Just a regular like organ. And he would play and sing Beer Barrel Polka, but it was just like, but I think that, and if we get a chance to get into some of the comments and questions people have for you, it's a lot of people wonder, how do you get from point A to point B, or point A to point Z? Like how do you become Bill Frisell? Like when somebody's 23 or 25 or 28 or whatever age they are, and they meet you now, or meet you musically now, they hear your records. You know, I think it's important to understand that, you know, all of us have done wedding gigs. We've all done parties. And to be honest, I kind of miss an aspect of music where people were kind of moving around and having fun while we're playing. I kind of miss it. I did a show the other night, and I was like, I just stopped in the middle of a song. I was like, if you want to talk or dance, go ahead. Sorry, I'm maybe I'm over speaking my, but I just, what happened to that part of this music? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, no, I miss that too. And more, earlier on when I was in high school, more playing, I was playing in more like R&B bands or something, it was amazing just playing for dances and stuff. That was so fun.
Right. And people were, in those days, they're having cigarettes and stuff, right? You remember the smoke like hovering over us in these clubs, and, they're talking and they're not listening to the music, I guess, but they're just having a great time. And I'm kind of thinking like, what happened to that? And maybe I'm overstating it, but I'm also trying to provoke something here and see if you have a commentary on it,
Yeah. Well, you can't smoke anymore.
Well, yeah, forget this. I know everybody always focuses on that. All right, you can't smoke anymore, fine. But you get my point. Like, what happened?
Yeah, no.
As part of the, party.
Yeah, no, there's just something becomes so precious or something. I don't know. There's something happens maybe in the music when the audience is not absolutely like just like maybe you can take more chance. There's something kind of cool. I don't know if this something like sometimes there's these solo guitar gigs or something in a bar, and people are just talking, and there's something kind of great about that.
Yeah, I agree.
Just play tune. You can work on your stuff. It's not so precious. It's it is to you. You can be playing some real music and not like feel like you're under a microscope or something.
Bill, I'm going to ask you a very hard question, okay? And and this is from one of your fans, and I hope you're ready for it. All right?
Uh-oh.
Okay. So this is from Danae Greenfield. Do you know her? She's a fantastic keyboard player, pianist, young lady from Seattle.
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, she's been on the show. She's amazing. And she says, what's his favorite pair of socks? I distinctly remember seeing him at the University of Washington several years ago, and he had some crazy socks on.
Oh.
You're into your socks. Come on, man.
No, I like socks, and that seems like the one area where I can
flourish.
Let loose. I don't know. I've got all kinds of bunch of socks. I'm more and more conscious of how socks are like, to get a comfortable sock, that fits right. And how come they only come in this one sock? Like, I don't know. It's hard to get just the right ones. And the ones that are just the right amount of sort of squishy enough. And
I know. I'm sorry. I know it's a tough question, man. I apologize, but it's just, I think it's important. And Danae is amazing. You should check her out. I'll you're not on social media, but I'll try to connect you somehow.
Yeah, I want to. She's in Seattle, you said?
She's from Seattle, which is how she became aware of you, because she went to some workshop or masterclass at the UW.
Oh, wow. Maybe I'm terrible.
Yeah, I'm terrible that way too. She doesn't claim to know you. She just said, I went to this master class or whatever at the University of Washington. So it's no big deal. But one thing that we were talking about during the break, Bill, is this whole idea of getting back to how we felt as children, like, that school concert or whatever it was, that first gig we did, even if it was a wedding, like, just excitement. And one thing for me, when we were having the pandemic and I took some time off from music, and then, finally did a live show with a real audience, it just was like, I felt that energy again. I felt, oh my God, I'm actually enjoying this. And I'm not trying to be dark, but there have been days where I'm like, oh my God, I got to finish this piece, or I have to do this show and I want to get it over with. I'm just being honest. And I haven't talked about this yet. And I'm not saying that you're that way, but do you want to speak to that? I mean, getting back to that place of, what? I don't want to put words in your mouth. Enjoying.
Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that, trying to be in that zone where you don't understand what's going on. Like that's, as we get older, like, I don't know if it was, I just recently had my 70th birthday and I'm like,
wow,
like what is going on?
Right.
Like, and there's this accumulation, like we're all, like you're a musician, right? You want to learn, we're studying, we try to figure stuff out. And there's this accumulation of, again, I'm thinking of Boston again. I don't know what this is. I don't know. I don't know. But I went to Berkeley and I've had all these teachers and I keep trying. I want to learn. I want to figure stuff out. But there's this thing that happens. So there's all this mass of information that's built up. But the place I want to be at when I'm like, during this pandemic, I wrote piles, like, look at this. This is like all filled up with stuff that I wrote every day, right? Wow. It's absurd. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's brilliant. It's beautiful.
No, it's not. I have no idea what it is, but I just, the first day I grabbed my guitar and I just started strumming away and writing stuff down. So it's just page after page after page of, I don't even know if it's music or what it is. No one's played it yet. So I don't know except me. And then by the next day, I've forgotten what it was. But what I'm getting at is all this, when I'm writing, I keep thinking about how can I be in this state where I'm not letting all this conditioning push me into something that I know is going to work. I mean, I'm trying to listen in my head and be in that spot, like where I didn't know what was going to happen next, or I didn't know, like you hear something and you can't quite grasp it, but you reach for it without using some sort of falling back on something that I learned in Boston. I don't know what I'm saying exactly, but I've been thinking about that a lot as I'm getting older. I want to stay in that zone where I don't know what's coming next, whether it's something I do or the people that I'm playing with. I think that's the joy of getting to play with people too, which was so difficult during this time where I was just in my own head all the time. But when you're with other people and you have to respond, you're constantly being surprised and thrown off by the people you're with. Hopefully that's what I'm looking for too.
Do you mind if I interject something here or?
No.
I guess it's it's one of those things where when and I'm just going to make this about me because I don't want to like put words or like say what you're going through, but when I just didn't feel like practicing and also was writing music a little bit and just didn't even know what it was for. And then I did the show and my lips were kind of hurting and maybe my technique wasn't so great, but there was just something about it that felt good. I have to be honest. Yeah. There was just something about it that felt good. I couldn't play the stuff that I knew how to play. I was very limited and I had to take breaks. I was like, I just need to like sit back and, either talk to the audience or just chill. And I have to be honest, it felt kind of good.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that like you had time to forget what you,
right.
what you knew or something. No, maybe. I've had that same when I've gotten to do a few gigs lately too. And it's just, wow, that thing where you actually feel, for me, it was something about this connection with the people I was with. Like, wow, we hit that downbeat just at the right time together or something. Just these super subtle,
like simple, if not subtle, right?
Oh yeah. But the best stuff, just that hooking up thing.
I think that's something that I noticed when you and Joey Byron and Kermit were playing together, just the way you were dancing around together on stage. And like, I don't even know how to put it into words. It was just something like that. And that was like 800 years ago. And even Hank, although I think Hank was always this kind of wild card floating around, but I love that band. And I hope Kermit's doing well. I haven't heard anything from him in a while, but
yeah, it's been a while.
That was a great band. But in that vein, at least two people said, when I asked if they had questions for you, and they say, he is so versatile. I wonder if there's anything on his bucket list still. Like, is there anything that, and then another person said, is there any record that's from Arletta? Given all your successes, you, Bill, not me, diverse projects Bill's done throughout his career, is there anything that he has tried to do in the past that maybe he didn't get picked up by a label? I'm just reading the exact words here, by a label, or get support needed that he'd like to still do. So there's two people that were wondering, like, is there anything you want to do that you haven't done?
I mean, I've never really had, that's where I've been so lucky too. I don't have any, I usually don't have specific goals. It's like it's like opportunities keep sort of presenting them, or challenges, or sort of are dropped in front of me, and I deal with them. And that's what sort of leads, sort of a combination of that, whatever my own, where my imagination is taking me, and then just amazing opportunities keep presenting themselves. I don't have in 2 years from now, I want to have done this or that. It's just, I'm just sort of in the process all the time of just working on stuff. And I've been really like I think the second question was something where they were asking about if I didn't get funding for something or some. That's where I've been unbelievably lucky, looking back over the last however many 40 years or whatever it is, where I've had opportunities with record companies and stuff to do pretty much just bam, 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 every year or something I've been able to do some kind of record. I don't know how much longer that can go on, the way, the whole world is so different now, but that's been amazing that I've been able to record that much, document that much of what I'm doing.
Right. So the real question is, and this is something that I've thought about a lot in my life. Is it luck? Is it really luck, Bill? Or are you just fucking brilliant? And I apologize for the cussing. You're not much of a cusser, but I mean, is it really luck? I mean, come on.
Well, there's got to be some of that. I mean, or it's persistence. You're talking about Paul. I mean, I think part of stubbornness. I mean, Paul said I was the most stubborn person he ever met. Maybe that doesn't come across now as, I'm this Mr. Nice Guy or whatever it is. Right. But that, I think that has something to do, back when I first started dreaming about playing, when I was, I don't know how old I was, 12 or something. It just kept this, that was all I wanted to do. And I've just, I mean, I remember a moment. There was a specific moment. I was teaching in a music store in Denver, and I had no real hope I was living in this little sort of transient flea bag apartment downtown Denver, teaching music lessons, but I've just made this decision. It was a conscious decision, like, no matter what happens, I don't care if I ever get a gig or anything. All I'm going to do for the rest of my life is just play this guitar, because that's the only thing I wanted to do. I wasn't thinking about, of course, it would be nice to get a gig and everything, but it was a conscious decision to just, that's what I loved, and that's what I was going to do for the rest of my life.
So I mean, there's somebody like me who was a gig meister from very young, like age 14 or 15, where, I mean, I wanted to play music, but I also wanted to have gigs. Like, it was very conscious on my part. I had my own big band, and then I had my own band. I was writing my own music. I'm like, this is what I wanted to play music, but I also wanted to, and then at a certain point, you realize that that's not the goal, right? The goal is the passion. And so it seems like, if you're being honest, which I believe you are, that you really just always wanted to make music, and that's a beautiful thing, right?
Well, but then, yeah, also I thought it would be cool to have a job. That was the other thing. I remember another moment, very clear. I must have been in 4th grade or something, because my mother was driving me to get my new glasses and it was on East Colfax Street in Denver. And so I was like, how old was I? 10 years old or something. I'm going to get my first pair of glasses. And we're on this, I don't know if anybody knows Colfax in Denver. It's kind of what would you call it? There used to be a lot of neon signs and motels and
it's like the Strip. I was born in Greeley. We lived in Greeley.
Oh,
yeah. And we lived, no, I'm sorry. I was born in Greeley. We lived in Boulder. And I think we may have transitioned in Denver.
Did I know that? I didn't know that.
You did not know that.
Oh my God. Well, Colfax then.
Yeah, Colfax. That's like the Las Vegas Strip of Colorado, in my opinion, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. It's like it used to be the main east-west. It turns into the highway that you can drive all the way to.
Yeah, there's like strip malls and neon signs and all this stuff. It was like, It's like the Las Vegas Strip, in my opinion, but
But so anyway, I'm 10 years old, and I see this man, like a grown man with a suit on, and he's carrying a guitar case, just walking down Colfax. And I thought, man, that is like the coolest thing. That's like, look at this. He's a man, and he's got a job, and his job is playing the guitar.
Right. It's so cool. Right.
And I thought that sort of really, wow, that's something that people do, like it's a job. Yeah. And then later I would see, like on TV, I'd watch the Lawrence Welk show, because I'd see the guys playing their guitars, or I remember seeing, I think it was some really early Joan Baez or somebody like that was on some variety show on TV, and there was just a guy standing behind her. She was singing and playing her guitar, and then there was this other guy in the back just kind of playing little stuff behind her. And I thought, that would be amazing, to have a job like that.
You want to be that guy in the background. You don't want to be Joan Baez. You want to be that guy in the background.
Totally.
So cool.
No, I thought that was like incredible.
Can I tell you something, Bill? And it's a little bit of a transition. Feel free to go back. But I had Luke Bergman on the show.
Oh, wow.
And I feel like Luke is even more that person than you are. Like, he does not want to be called out. What? Sorry. If you want to.
No, he's like pure music. Yeah.
Yeah. And he doesn't want to be known. And after the interview, he's like, I hope you got something out of that. It's like, Luke, you're amazing. You play with Bill, right? You do this amazing music on Frisell's records and shows and everything. And you're just this brilliant guy. And he's like, yeah, but I just don't really want anybody to know who I am. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, he's singing on your records. He's playing cello, right? He's playing bass, right? Baritone bass.
Yeah, and arranging. Man, makes these, like, the band that we do often is this thing called harmony. You mentioned Petra Hayden, like it's Petra Hayden and Hank and Luke, and they all sing and stuff. And Luke has done a couple of these arrangements of his sense of harmony and stuff is just amazing.
It's amazing. And you were going to say on something, it's unparalleled in my opinion. Like, you know, when you think about these people from these arrangers from the 60s or the ones from the 30s, 40s. I mean, Luke is on that level for me, but he's just so humble. And he kept like dismissing himself during the interview. And I'm like, Luke, I'm having you on because I think you're brilliant, man. Right. And you're working with Frisell. And so he's that guy behind Joan Baez. Right. Like, and so who's Luke Bergman? How many views will his interview get? You know, like 36 or something. But I'm like, no, this is the reason that Frisell sounds the way he sounds at sometimes when you guys work.
Totally.
You agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, he's one of the guys. I mean, that's what I'm drawn to people that they're coming from the most deepest inner part of the music. You know, he understands all the levels of the music that are going on at any time. You know, he's coming from the inside. Those are the people that all, like when I listen to music, that's what gets me off. It's not like what's out in front, but like if I listen to Miles Davis Quintet, it's like, wow, did you hear what Herbie just played that one thing? Right. You know, it's the way stuff is, like the inner workings of an old watch, or, you know, the way the insides are working. That's what gets me really fired up.
Right. And I'm like, look at me, look at how great I am. Right. Like, no. Right. No, I have this. Can I tell you a Paul Motion story? Let me just tell you a quick Paul Motion story. So we're doing the Vanguard, right? First night, you know, that classic rehearsing the first night of the show, like during sound check, you're rehearsing, right? You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so we're playing with Bill McHenry, Ben Street on bass, and Dwayne Eubanks and Paul Motion on drums.
Wow.
And we're rehearsing, and Paul stops the band, and he goes, and he didn't know me, that we met on stage, and he goes, alto player's too loud.
Oh, shit.
No, but you know, because I'm like, look at me, right? And Paul just like picked up on it immediately. I thought that was kind of like fun,
wow.
Right? Like kind of like brilliant, right?
Oh yeah, wow.
Because that's been my thing. So I've been playing quieter since then. But I remember you saw me at a club in Seattle. What was that place called? Racer? I think it's called Racer.
Oh.
And you left because I was playing too loud. You and your wife came. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. I play too loud.
Now, see, I don't remember that.
It's okay.
I probably was just hungry or something.
It doesn't matter.
I didn't want to eat one of those cheese things they had in there.
I think it's totally cool. And I think it's cool that Motion called it out in like 10 minutes. It's like, stop. Alto player's too loud. He didn't even know my name at that point, right? He had to say alto player. That's cool, right?
Oh man, yeah, that's great.
Fun times. And can I ask you another fan question, because I'm kind of curious myself. Do you mind?
No. That's
okay. Right. So somebody named Gabe Terraciano, I think is the name. Do you know who that is?
I don't think so.
I don't know who that is either. I'd love to know a bit behind the process of making Have a Little Faith. Great record. What a big influence on me. The blend of different elements of Americana to Copeland, to Dylan, to Ives, to Madonna feels so seamless, not to mention an instrumentation including clarinet and accordion. How did he, Bill, you, arrive at the final product in terms of repertoire and personnel in particular? And that has Don Byron on clarinet, Kermit Driscoll, as we've talked about, on bass, Guy Klubasek on accordion, and Joey Barron on drums. So is that luck? Come on, Bill. That's not luck. You you worked on that project. Come on, man. Come on, man. Don't put that hope out there for everybody. Like, man, it's just luck. This is like a brilliant record. It's from 93, I think, something like that.
But it was another one of those prior to that. So that was like I've done like, maybe 4 or 5 of my own albums before that. I don't even remember, something like that, 4 or 5, say. And all those first albums, 90% of the music was all my own music. Maybe there was one cover song or something on it. I was really wanted to play my own. All my first records, let's just say they were, with a few minor exceptions, it was all original music that I wrote. And so that Have a Little Faith was actually, it was another sort of it's not like the record company is telling me what to do, because I wouldn't go for that, but it was a suggestion with the Bob Hurwitz, who was the president of Nonesuch. He said, well, what about, have you ever thought of doing something, just because I'd done all this music, I'd shown that I could write music, if hopefully something. That's what it was up to that. But the idea was to sort of show where I was coming from. So that I took that on as, okay, it seems time. This is a chance for me to just, it was kind of a combination of paying tribute to people that had inspired me. Like, you know, we do a Sonny Rollins song on there.
Yeah, and you play When I Fall in Love, I think, right?
Yeah. And the music on there was more like a overview of, I mean, you know, it has to be limited, but it just showed where I was coming. You know, there's a Bob Dylan song, there's a John Hyatt song. Right. There's different reasons for the, you know, Charles Ives and Aaron Copland and, you know, the Madonna, like some of the songs had, you know, a lot of it had really deep personal meaning for me somehow, or where people always ask about that Madonna song. That was I just played it because I thought it was a great song. It wasn't so much, it was some big part of my life. It was that song I heard, I was on tour. You've probably had those moments, you know, so many times we're traveling and I was jet lagged and I was somewhere in Norway or something. And I was sleeping during the day, just trying to get myself together. And there's movie. Oh, what's the name of the movie now? With Sean Penn and Christopher Walken.
I don't know.
It's a kind of intense movie. But at the end, the very end of the film, as the credits that song came on, I was like, man, this is a badass song. And I just fell in love with the song. So whereas, you know, if we play a Sonny Rollins song, it's more like, oh my God, you know, Sonny Rollins,
right?
My hero, you know, and or Charles Ives, who, you know, there were different reasons for choosing those songs, but the idea was to just kind of show what I liked. And playing with those guys, that was incredible because, you know, there's only 5 people. So it was such a joy to try to figure out a way to, having Don Byron as that voice. Like I was thinking about the Aaron Copland stuff that we played, you know, to take an orchestra piece and shrink it down to 5 people. That was amazing because there was a section that I wanted to play that I had heard on a recording that wasn't in the score. It wasn't in the, I forget what they call it. Like there's a complete Billy the Kid ballet, and then there's sort of this orchestral excerpts or whatever that normally you would hear if the New York Phil plays it or something. But there was a section that I wanted to do that wasn't in any recordings, that wasn't in the scores that I had. So I went to the Juilliard library, and it's like you go upstairs. It's the archive thing.
I've been there. Yes. I went there with Dave Douglas.
I have to ask permission to blah, blah, blah. And I went in there and they brought out it wasn't the original. It was like a blueprint sort of thing of the original score, but it had, you know, Aaron Copland's marks on, you know, they put you in this room and they bring it out and they sort of watch you to make sure you're not going to, but I was able to find that section, you know, but it was so awesome just to see his handwriting, and I love seeing that.
I do too. And Bill, you were talking earlier about the inner workings of a watch, which I'm into as well. And like the inner workings of my saxophone, my Kahn New Wonder, that's 100 years old. I love hearing, I'm actually having a whole event about it in August because I'm so fascinated by this.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So really, you gave us the background of the music in your process, but how does somebody even get to that place? Like to even get to record this record? Like, how does that work? And if you don't want to share your secrets, and again, I'm going to be.
Well, isn't that luck? I don't know.
I don't know.
I was in the right place at the right time. I don't know.
You didn't have somebody cheering you on, like a manager or your wife or somebody.
Well, yeah, no, that's where, again, my whole life, starting with my parents were always, yeah, go ahead, do it, you know, practice in the basement. When I think all the racket that we were making down in our basement, and they always encouraged me with music. And then I had so many teachers that it's fragile, you know. There was so many times when I thought, oh man, I can't do this. There's no way I can. And so many times just at that moment, there'd be some guy would pat me on the back. When I was in Greeley, I went to college there for 2 years. And I remember, did you live in Greeley?
We lived in Greeley. My dad taught at UNC at one point.
Unbelievable.
So, and as far as the
years, weren't even born when I was there, but.
Well, yeah, I was born in 65. So whatever, my pop taught there and somewhere.
So you would have been running around.
Yeah, maybe. Or my dad was teaching you. I don't know.
But no, so did you know Buddy Baker by any chance?
No.
Trombone, incredible musician. He's still there. I think he's in his 90s now. Trombone player. He played with Stan Kenton and Woody Herman, you know, and he was in the jazz program there. And I'm just saying, like, one day I'm walking down the hall and I'm thinking, man, I wasn't cut out for this. I think I gotta just hang it up. And I was really at this dark moment. Just at that moment, he comes walking around the corner and pats me on the Bill, man, you sound so, you really got something special, you know? And it's like, what?
Buddy Baker is the Luke Bergman of that. Like he's right. He's like that guy in the background that nobody knows. I actually know him. I mean, know about him, but what? Sorry, I interrupted you. I apologize.
Well, no, I'm just saying that happened so many times when I was discouraged, and it's like such a fine. It's like you're on this edge of thinking you can't do it, and there's just more often than I've had the other thing happen too a few times, and it can really knock you down. But more often than not, I had someone that was, my wife, my daughter, my parents, my friends, my teachers, that were always, all those guys you mentioned, Joey and Kermit, those guys were like, Kermit was there for me. He heard the first notes I ever wrote when no one else would even listen to him. He was like, man, that's great. Like cheerleader guy, So I mean, it's been really lucky.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about the lucky thing, but I'll leave it at that. But it's just, all right.
Because I can't, man.
What?
You really want to get honest, I can't, I can't play that good, I'm just like, no.
Oh, come on.
I mean,
man.
No, really. We used to, like we did that gig in Seattle.
Yeah.
That was playing your music. I was like, man alive, that I couldn't come close to playing that. And talk about Luke's just sitting there, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm going like 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. Oh God, shit, fuck. And I was dying, and I couldn't. If I had maybe a month, if we had another month, I could have got it together. But I'm just skating by.
I was at this.
I just love playing. That's all.
Right. I was at this party. Oh my goodness. Do you remember in the middle of the pandemic, there was like kind of this release where like, oh yeah, it's okay to be together, right? There was a minute in there, at least in New York. So it was at this kind of small party. It was only like 3 of us or 5 of us. And they put a recording. It's on YouTube, that UW thing we did at the University of Washington with Luke, you and me, and Myra and Kung, right? And
they
Ted.
had that? There was evidence?
It's on YouTube. There's evidence. And I said, you need to take this off. And it wasn't about you. It was about me. Because I was like, I'm not hanging. I'm like, I can't listen to this right now. And they're like, well, it's really great, man. I was like, no, you got to take it off. So let me ask you that question. Can you listen to yourself play? Bill,
I really
that's coming
don't.
From me.
I don't really do it. I mean, when I make an album, it's like you're super concentrated and you're checking things out, but I never listen to my own. That's the only time I listen to it is when we're mixing it or something like that. And then that's it. And then I'll hear it by accident, maybe later, but I never go back and I don't listen to tapes of gigs, and I just don't, I don't know. I'm just trying to keep moving on ahead somehow.
Yeah. I mean, fair enough. I was just curious. And I know that some people listen to their music to analyze it and attempt to get better. But
yeah, I mean, that's maybe I should be doing that. I don't know, but something I just don't really like doing that.
Fair enough. And did you really just turn 70? Is that for real? Are you giving me amazing? You look fucking handsome. You look beautiful. And I can't believe it. And maybe people would disagree with me, but I don't know, man. I'm like just blown away that you're still, at it, and you just held up this stack of music. And I know you said you don't know what it is, but I don't believe you. If you believe in luck, then, you're going to.
But it doesn't exist really until somebody else plays it. It has to be more than just me. It changes so much. Don't you find that? Like if you write something and then you have someone else play it, it's like, whoa, wait a second.
Yeah, I know. It's like, it's a totally different experience. If I write something 25 years ago for, whoever, Kurt Rosenwinkel or Chris Speed or whoever I'm writing it for, and then like Pat Metheny actually recorded one of my songs. I'm not promoting this because it doesn't matter, but I wrote it when I was like 20, and Pat just thought it was a cool song, so we recorded it, and it sounds totally different than when I imagined it as a 20. Okay, maybe I was 22. I don't remember. I'm not great with that kind of stuff, but I was definitely a young kid, and he just found it, and Kong showed it to him, and he's like, "Yeah, I'll record it," and it's just like, what? Or like Playing With You, like one of my heroes. You know, and then we're playing one of my pieces, and you're like, you think you're just whatever, skating or whatever you think you're doing. I'm like, this is just, it's hero worship for me. I'm like, all right, yeah, but it just sounds so different. Did that sound like a plug? Name dropping?
I was playing it all wrong.
You were? There was no chart. There is no wrong.
No.
Well, no, all right, huh?
No, it's just, it really is. There's something. That's what's been hard about all this time. It's not, we're all just in our own heads all the time. And for me, music is about getting it out, you know, interacting. So.
All right. So in conclusion, did I read you this quote about Hendrix? I know I told you about the Hendrix thing in the beginning, right? So unrelated, I didn't read this, right? I'd like to finish with this. This is a planned score, by the way. So can I read this quote?
Yeah.
So there's this guy, David Beckett, and in my social media post, he says randomly, and I've never really talked to people about that moment in 1991 or 92 about you being compared to Hendrix. He says, here's a question for Bill. How, so many years after Hendrix, did you come up with such a singular musical conception using guitar? Did you consciously strive for a unique sound, or was it the product of other choices? And I was like, what? Like that was the beginning of my conversation with you, which I had like totally contrived or like totally composed. Was I wanted to bring up that quote from so many years ago, and here's a kid asking you that question. I don't know. It's kind of funny. So did you? I don't understand the question myself, but I can read it again if you want.
Well, no, I mean, whatever it is that I sound like, I think it has a lot to do with your limitations, I think, are what, it's a number of things, you know, being honest with where we come from and not being afraid to show what we like. But then there's this thing about, like, I try to play like this guy, and I try to play like, you know, I'd like to play like Jimi Hendrix, but I can't get that right. And I'd like to play like John McLaughlin, and I can't do that. And I want to play like Wes Montgomery. I'm trying my best. I love all these guys, but I'm limited. I have my limitations. So what's left is what you get. It's if I could play like all those guys, then I wouldn't be, you know?
Yeah. I mean, we went back and forth, this guy, David and I, and his point was that there's a lot of amazing guitar players out there, but not many of them have their own sound. And in fact, I think he said there's a lot of brilliant or amazing guitar players, or, you know, whatever. And he goes, but how does Bill just, and so you're saying you get your personal sound out of limitations because you can't imitate other people. Is that what you're saying? Or
well, kind of, yeah. But I mean, it just has something to do with what you love. Like there was a time when I would be embarrassed to play something that I kind of like, you know, that Burt Bacharach song, you know, I actually like it, but people think it's corny or something. So I'm not going to play. I'm talking about earlier on. I was more worried about what I thought people might think or something. And so first of all, just to shake all that off, and then just to be honest with, you know, that I grew up in Denver in the 50s, and I watched the Mickey Mouse Club on TV, and I watched Leave It to Beaver, and I like the Beatles, and whatever. I'm just trying to be straight, trying to not be something that I'm not, and then just keep trying. I still believe everyone has their own sound, you know, like when we talk, you don't sound like anybody else when you speak, I don't think.
Right. Nobody does. Right.
So, yeah. So, and I think it's the same with, if we're just honest, I don't know.
I don't know. And it feels like, you know, we could make or you could make this like overlying statement, you know, or like some kind of meme where you're saying, and nobody cannot sound like themselves, or whatever that meme looks like. But at the same time, if people just realize they can't be anything but themselves, but yet at the same time, some people are good at doing imitations, you know, or like, you know, they are.
Yeah. And there was a time I was so into Jim Hall. If you had heard me like in 1972, I couldn't do it, but that's what everything was about him, you know, for me, and the sound, and I had the guitar, and I played all those songs and whatever that it was. But then I realized, oh, wait a minute, that's not, he's playing what he knows. He's playing his life experience. You know?
That's how he sounds, right?
And then it was sort of like the people that inspired me. I started realizing, wait a minute, Sonny Rollins he's playing the songs that he grew up with and the songs that he saw in movies or whatever. And so I thought, well, maybe I should play the songs that I saw in movies and songs that I grew up with. And I think I learned that from those guys, you know.
Well, somebody mentioned to me in conversation, you know, could you ask Frisell how has music changed from the ECM days until now? And that seems like whatever, you're into technique, you're into the inner workings of a guitar. A watch. Did you consciously change your playing? I don't think you sound different. I just think you're playing, you know, just choosing different repertoire or writing new music, right?
Yeah, there's nothing. I'm taking these tiny things, moving these tiny increments. I hope it's changed because I'm trying to get better, but that always bothers me, you know, that thing, the ECM thing, the downtown thing, and the Americana thing, and the blah blah blah.
Bothers me too.
A lot of it was all happening at the same time. You know, I was playing with Ronald Shannon Jackson, and I was playing with whatever ECM record at the same time. It wasn't like there was this thing and then there was that thing, or I was playing with Zorn and I was playing with Paul Motion at the same time, or all these things. I wasn't thinking about these different stages, or I wasn't thinking about what it's called, you know, just that thing about all the energy that goes into trying to, let's find a name for this particular, or that, you know, I went to Nashville and I made a record, and I was that stuff's happened long before I went to Nashville. Although going there, I learned a shitload of, it was mind blowing to get to play with those guys, you know, but it's not like suddenly I became interested in country music or something. That was part of growing up in Colorado, or part of, you know, listening to Bob Dylan or listening to Jimi Hendrix, or it was all in there all along. the people seem to want to chop it up into this. There was this, and then there was this, and this, and this, and then you change, and you did. And I don't really change what I do it's the context that I'm in, or the surroundings might change, but I'm sort of just in there.
You're just being you. That was my point. I don't know if I hope I didn't offend you, Bill. My point is that I don't know, maybe it was a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine who I've known since high school, so like 15, 16, said, man, you sound the same as you did in high school. And I thought he was dissing, give me a hard time, and he goes, no, I'm just saying that you always sound like you, no matter what the context, whether it's a pop gig or, like you said, like doing a free jazz gig or whatever. He goes, you just sound like you. I hadn't seen this guy in years. And he goes, I heard your latest record. And he goes, you just sound the way you did. And that's what I'm saying. When somebody asks you, ask a question, what's the difference between your ECM days and your JMT days, and then playing with Zorn or playing, Bonanza or whatever you're doing? It's still you, Bill, right?
It can't be anybody else.
Yeah, exactly. That's what you were saying about the language. It can't be. I'm always going to be running for the limelight until the day I'm going to be grandpa. I'm now the uncle, but I'll be grandpa, but like, pay attention to me, man. Right. Loud and verbose and like using my hands and shit. It's just who I am. And I can't change it. I don't really care to change it. I hope it's not hurting anybody. But with you, where, I can remember this concert, from 20 years ago, with Joey, and I'm just like, Bill is just Bill, and it's okay if he wants to do this beautiful, song, or if he wants to, nothing's not beautiful. Right. But, what's the difference? I don't really get it. I don't understand the judgment. I don't get it.
Yeah.
What?
No, I agree. I don't get it either.
All right. So we're making strong opinions. Do you want to take it out? Maybe one last question from the, Bill Frisell is a magic man. The latest comment. So I guess I have one last thing. I know you're ready to go. You look to the side.
No, it's raining and
it's really nice.
No, I can stay here as long as you want.
Right. Okay. So I have a kind of cool little story that's hopefully relatable. I saw you on a nerd guitar podcast, and you were talking about your guitars and your pedals and stuff, and it was great. I don't remember the name of the podcast. Guy's great. I'll try to put the link on the bottom. And you had bought this Trini Lopez guitar. Do you remember buying that guitar?
Wow. Well, yeah, but that's a long time ago.
Yeah, we're old, Bill. What the fuck? Yeah. And
I wish I had kept that guitar. I sold it.
Wait, hold on. Hold your story, because I have my own story, which is I had this student named Taus. He's a Danish kid, and he's at my house, maybe, I don't know, 10 years ago, something like that. And he had gotten some money from the Danish government. He goes, I'd like to buy a guitar. And I took him to that place in the East Village. Do you remember that place, a guitar shop, or a West Village? Sorry.
Which Matt Umanoff?
Yes, Matt Umanoff's place. And so I take this boy in there, and he's my student at the time. And, and Matt sells him a Trini Lopez guitar.
Wow.
And also but sold it to him for like $3,000. I think yours was like more like $50 or something like this, right?
Not that bad, but
something like that.
It was, I should never have sold it.
So Taus, my student at the time, buys a guitar. His bank declines the transaction because it was $3,000 US. They're like, "Are you sure you want to spend this money?" It was this whole fucking thing.
Oh, wow.
So I had to co-sign for him, or whatever it was. And he got the guitar, and then he went on the internet and looked up Trini Lopez and said, "Oh, he's not an avant-garde guitar player." So he sold it.
Oh, man.
I just thought it was funny. Like that guitar was made really well. Those are great. And now
there was a time you could actually get them for a reasonable price. Now they're ridiculous.
No, again, $3,000, $5,000. I don't remember the exact price, but it was more than Taos could spend. And then he looked him on the internet, and Trini was just playing, his music, which is brilliant, by the way.
Man, he should have kept the guitar.
I know, but he's like, he likes to play free music, and he goes, "This is not the guitar for me. I'm selling it."
Because that would have been a kind of a thing,
right?
People would have. Oh man, he's the guy.
You tell him, man.
The guy with, that guy that plays the Trini Lopez guitar.
I love that I randomly am on the internet looking you up just to see what I can see. And then you're talking about this Trini Lopez guitar. And also the kid that you were talking to, like, totally brushed it off. Do you remember that interview? That's the pedals interview and the amps and all that shit. And you're like, I had this Trini Lopez guitar. And he's like, yeah, whatever. Anyway, so about the Telecaster, it's funny. And Taos was like, yeah, no, I'm not into this shit. But I kept saying, it's a really nice guitar, Taos. It's built really well, Yeah. And I think it'll serve you well. And he's like, nah, I'm selling it. I was like, all right. Because he didn't like what Trini, I should put a link to a Trini Lopez song on this podcast. Yeah. That's cool, right? It's a cool guitar.
Totally cool. Like really cool.
And it was heavy. That's what I remember. It was a heavy guitar. No? Like weight wise.
Well, they're big,
Yeah. So that's a good memory, right?
Yeah.
And if you could see Taos, he looks like he's fucking 10 years old, right? I mean, he's like 30, right? But he looks like he's 10. And so he's got this big guitar in his back. And he just spent like 10 grand on it or whatever it was. And then he looks him up on the internet, like, I don't really like this. I don't like his playing. I think I'm going to sell it, right? I don't know. I thought it was cute. So is there anything else, Bill, are you going to talk about the trio, or is that just off
We never did talk about the trio.
I mean, I think Reed is convinced that you don't want to talk about it.
I do. That's like the greatest thing in my, so Paul called me. I went over. I have talked about this a few times, but the first day I went over to meet Paul was Paul and Mark Johnson trio. Mark Johnson playing bass, and I came in and I'd never met Mark and I'd never met Paul. I was like seriously freaked out, just wow. And they're in there talking. Bill Evans had passed away not that long before, and they're talking about Bill Evans, memories of Bill Evans. And here I am, this electric guitar player coming in to play with those guys with their association with Bill Evans. And I think the first song we played was My Man's Gone Now, George Gershwin's song that Paul they had both played with Bill Evans. And I'm thinking, oh my God, and that's a song I'd been trying to play for many, many years. And I still play it often, but that was kind of a heavy moment to play that song with those guys at that moment. But that was the beginning of, then I'd go to Paul's like every week or whatever it was, then Mark left and went with Stan Getz. Then different people would come by. Marty Ehrlich played for a while. Then Ed Schuler came, and then Joe came, and Stan Strickland came. It was so amazing because I was sort of in where Paul was really committing to writing his own music. So I was right in there on the ground floor. Sometimes I'd go over there, just me and him, and he would have me play through these things that he wrote. And it's just like, what a privilege to be in on that. He just wanted to hear someone else, like what I was saying about, you got to hear somebody else play. He wanted to hear someone else play it. And we rehearsed for just all different combinations of people coming through. Eventually Joe came, and then it wasn't until the fall, again, here we go, Boston again. The very first gig we did was at Riles in Boston.
Wow.
Late in the fall of, this was 1981. So I'd been rehearsing with him for like 9-10 months before we ever did a gig, just working on stuff. And the first gig was Joe and Ed Schuller and me and Paul quartet. Then we went to Europe with Billy Drews on saxophone and Joe and Ed Schuller. And it was a quintet for a while. And that was the first album I did with him. And that went on then Jim Pepper came in the band.
Wow.
And so eventually I remember one night we were in Hamburg, and there was a moment in the music where Ed Schuller was not playing and Pepper was not playing, and it was just Joe and Paul and me. And I knew it was like sort of this, I could tell something was going on. Paul, I think that was he's mentioned that as sort of a moment when he realized that, oh, wow, we could actually do this as a trio, and then so soon after that, we started, that was like 83 or something like that. And at the beginning, it was like, whoa, it was so awesome, but it was frightening, like having that space. I mean, it's more than just bass, but there's this whole frequency range that opens up with the sound of my guitar, and then the sound of the drums sound different. There's like this whole, and I remember at the beginning, I was like in a panic. Like I would try to fill in all this stuff. It took I think even for Paul too, like to cool out and like, okay, wait a second, you don't have to, I don't always have to play a bass note, it doesn't, I don't have to fill in those. And it just, it grew into this, where there was just no thought anymore. It just, and those first few years we rehearsed a lot. Like we'd rehearse over at Joe's loft on 23rd Street, but then after a few years, no more rehearsals. And, all those years we played at the Van, it was incredible. Those, like we wouldn't rehearse. We'd only have these 2 weeks every year, at the Vanguard. There was a point where we stopped doing tours of Europe and just basically had that Vanguard gig. And for however many years, and no rehearsal. Joe would walk in like 5 minutes before the gig, just walk on stage, and we just bam, it just start up where it left off, No, there was unbelievable time from
and
30,
it's just
30 years, with
30 years that band was together.
Or the trio was a couple of years later, but from he passed away in 2011, and I started playing with him in 81. So
amazing. I guess it's first of all, it's amazing to hear the roots of that band, but it's also, I mean, it's the whole reason Human Feel, which has been together for 30 years, my band, or the band that I belong to, the whole reason we dropped the bass was because we're like, well, if Motion and Frisell and Lovano, don't need a bass player, neither do we. So we were like, fuck it. Right. But then I love that. And also when I was talking to Reed Anderson and all these people working up to this interview, which has been in the works for like, 3 weeks, maybe a month. It's everybody's like, yeah, that band was such a huge influence on me. I don't know if people understand what a huge influence it had on so many of us. And it's a brilliant thing, and it's an amazing band. And I wonder, as we get on with our lives, do we understand the impact we've had on other people? Like, that's what I'm curious about. Like, do you walk around and understand the impact you've had on, young people or people even in my age group? I mean, I grew up on you, man. I grew up on your music. I grew up on Paul's music. When I got on stage with him, I was so nervous. I played even louder than I normally do, right? As I mentioned earlier, right? You know that feeling. And so it's just, I'm just wondering, like, do you walk out of the room going, I'm making an influence or what?
I'm not thinking about that. I mean, people, like, you're saying this now and people say things to me like that, but inside I'm still that, like, how am I going to figure out how do I play this F7 chord or something?
Right.
It's just, I'm just trying to figure out how to play. So that just never goes away.
So if you had, I think it's time to wrap things up. If you had something you wanted to say to the younger generation, other than everything you've said from playing at the Holiday Inn and weddings and the siren going by, everybody, that's in my house.
I thought it was out here.
No, it's over here. It was very loud. But if you wanted to, pass on some wisdom, other than this brilliant, amazing interview, which I thank you for, is there something, that you would like to say to the folks coming up who respect you and all these people who wrote you comments? I didn't even get through half of them, by the way. So I know you're not on social media, but I could keep going and going and going and going and going and going. So, but they're all along the same lines. They just think you're brilliant. So I talked a lot to give you a minute to think, but maybe you have some.
I mean, I can't, every once in a while I'll do those quote unquote master class thing. I always feel uncomfortable with that because we're all in the same boat if we're trying to play, right? I don't feel, I guess I'm 70 years old, so I've been trying for a while, but as far as me, I don't have any answers other than just music never lets me down. I'll tell you that. If I stay true to it, that's what got me through this whole last year and more. Like I said, first thing I did was just grab my guitar, and I realized how much I love just sitting there playing that thing. And it's always got something else. Every time you touch it, every note you play is it's like a question. Okay, what's the next note? What are you going to do? Now it just keeps going and going and going. There's no end to it. So that's kind of miraculous, and just, if you love it and you just, music is really pretty great, And I think everybody knows that thing about not being afraid to show. If you really love some sound, just don't be afraid to put it out there, because that'll come through way strong. If you like it and you put it out there, that's going to come through way stronger than trying to figure out what somebody else likes. Now I've got a helicopter dive bombing my place.
Yeah, there's probably something going on. It's beautiful. Thank you, Mr. Frisell. Thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
You.
And what?
It's like the roof's going to come off.
You're over in Ditmas or something like that, right?
Yeah. Where are you?
Park Slope.
So we're not can you hear this helicopter?
Yeah, I can hear it.
It's not, wow, it's like.
Oh, no, I can't hear it out my window. I can hear it through your audio.
It sounds like it's literally going to land on my roof.
Yeah, there's probably some mass shooting or something like that. But wait, let's not end on that. Let me tell you how much I love you, and have a beautiful night. And everybody, we've been with Bill Frisell today, and tonight or whatever it is at this point. Thank you, Bill. Have a good evening.
No, it's so good to talk to you. Hope I'll see you in real life soon. So.
Right. That'll be great. All right. Much love to you, man.
You too.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Constant Constance. Tune in every week for new conversations. And if you want even more, check out Andrew's Patreon for more exclusive content and additional conversations. Hosted and produced by Andrew D'Angelo. Edited and mixed by Lucy Little. Original music by Andrew D'Angelo and Maximilian Moore D'Angelo. Intro is Henrietta Weeks. Thanks so much. See you next time.
You fucking rocked it. Like
You
she doesn't know she says podcast, right? Like she doesn't even